So yeah, yesterday we did a FinLit class with some of his Neo folks, and what we did was we actually took the calculators and we did a short intro, 5 slide on just money versus, money and income versus wealth, and kind of the difference. And then we took people through a progression of sort of simple time value money compounding scenarios and stuff like that. This could easily be something that you could go in and teach to a group of high school kids or a group of realtors. I mean, frankly, right? Because it's a lot of stuff that people often miss. And so we went through basically just the general wealth calculators, hitting the progression of time value of money, rule of 72, lump sum, kind of stuff, compounding, the cost of waiting, those types of things, and then tied it into a few other little elements. So we'll post that up. I'll post the presentation up, the PowerPoint. We'll get the link up for you. But I thought it'd be fun today to do a little conversation, kind of a flashback on what is enough. And I had a version of PenFin that I've been working on. Just because I'm updating a bunch of things. And I'll actually maybe show you something else I'm working on that's kind of it's going to be sort of the PenFin sequel to take you through into sort of playing around not only with wealth and retirement, things like that. None of us are ever going to retire, but it's a fun concept to play around with notionally, right? Most of you guys, see, how many of you guys have been through the PenFin What is Enough course? I know John has, Dan has, Trevor has. Okay, Karen, you've gone through that. All right, Lauren, Jackie, and stuff. Okay, good. So I'll let me share a couple of different things. I'm gonna go through, and before I should get into what I wanted to talk about today, as a reminder, let's see. I posted the link up on that. And again, I'm moving, everything that's here is going to be over in the new, learning management system. So for any of you old heads or new heads, everything's going to be over here. I'm moving the fast over this weekend, and then I'll be doing the what is enough stuff. So the content will be there. But right now, after the CLA course and the fast course, we have the mentor course as well as some other things. And within that, there are multiple courses, and one of those is called What is Enough? And I broke it down into 6 parts, and it's currently on the nonprofit site, but it's in here. We actually have the Calm course, which is cash and liability mastery, and then we have the What is Enough course. It's one of my favorite things ever, both to teach and talk about. And it came again through a long inquiry process that I've continued to be on now most of my life around money and finances and things like that. And as I was thinking about this, um, sounds like a non sequitur, but when I say a long inquiry process, the nature of the Socratic process of inquiry is to have a question without trying to answer it. All right. And when I say that, if you've not done that before, because again, this is kind of continuum. So when I say have a question, the question you ask will pay infinite dividends. And in many ways, the most important thing you have to ask yourself day to day is what questions are you asking yourself? If I go back to the AI analogy, you are a large language model. You are prompting yourself throughout the day with questions and thoughts. A thought is typically, I'm calling that something different than a question. A thought is a statement. It's often an affirmation or a reaffirmation of an existing belief. Like if you're sitting there and you're like, I'm hungry, that's a thought, but it has implications, right? You may act on that thought and get up and go get lunch, as I did at 1 o'clock today, or you may sit there quietly and not eat lunch. And the thought may go away and you don't eat lunch, or the thought comes back and again presents you with, I am hungry. as a thought. Each time you have an opportunity to act or not act, right? The thought may be to jump out the window right now for some reason because a client just canceled a loan transaction, and you can act on that thought, and there what? There are implications. There's a cost, let's just say, in energy and time and potential stuff that happens when you do that. But these thoughts are arising all the time, and most of them are sort of de facto statements. And I mean, when I say de facto, I mean they are a fact. We think of them as a fact. I'm good at this. I'm not good at this. I like this. I don't like this. These are sort of, you could call them observations, but again, they're thoughts. They're charged and they're recorded. For something to be recorded in your memory, it requires energy and the form of a charge. And if you don't believe this, ask yourself, where were you yesterday at 2 p.m.? How many people in this moment, without having to really search, know where they were yesterday at 2 p.m.? Okay. So tell me why you remember why you were there yesterday at 2 p.m.
Kicking off a call with Todd Ballinger.
Okay. So there was a charge there, right? How about the
If you
day
want to call it
before?
that.
Yeah. No, I mean, in that
I'm
there was
just kidding.
enough, when I say a charge, there's enough focus, energy, and attention for that to sort of, again, leave a little bit of a mark. If I said Monday at 2 p.m., what were you doing? Okay, if you were in the emergency room with your son because he had just fallen off his bike and had stitches, you would know immediately where you were, right? Because that's charged. And again, when you go out just a day or 2 or 3 days, how about you, John? How do you remember what you were doing yesterday too?
Because I was stressed out because I was running late to a lunch appointment.
Okay, there you go. So stress, that's a form of energy. Excitement, anticipation, those are forms of energy. But the things that aren't kicked up enough for you to remember they just become part of the background, the noise. How about you, Lauren? You said you remembered what you were doing yesterday too?
Yeah, it was like that charge, like you said. I had to pick up my kid early from school because he was sick. But like Monday, Tuesday, I don't remember by now. Yeah.
Absolutely. And on Saturday or Sunday, if I asked you where you were yesterday at 2, you probably won't remember because that charge had just enough of a kick for you to remember it today, but not so much that it's going to persist a week from now. Okay. The things you remember, the things that come up in your subconscious or conscious when you're sitting around working during the day, those are things that have a charge. They will keep coming up until they're ultimately resolved in some way. The choice is as they show up, as they sort of appear, what do you do about them? Do you ignore them? Is it resistance or persistence? Do you engage them? And then how you engage them is critical because if you engage in a way that affirms, you're just simply what? You're adding more energetic charge. Think of it like a record. If you have a needle on a record and you keep what? Putting more and more pressure on that arm as it goes around, what happens to the groove?
It gets deeper.
It gets deeper. And that's how they say memory works. It gets charged enough to be recorded. And when it's repeated, if it's repeated with a charge, what happens?
It becomes permanent.
It becomes permanent. And we call that a belief system. So beliefs are nothing but a thought or something. I mean, again, you were a completely blank slate coming in, but over time with your parents and all of the environmental things that you were experiencing, they had belief systems. And one of the key belief systems was about money, right? Because they had to navigate their way through this thing called money, which, as we've said, is right up there with food, water, shelter, money in terms of the Maslow need hierarchy, because it is synonymous with food and shelter, right? When you think about living indoors and eating and all that kind of stuff. So when we're talking about money, there's something that's deeper that a lot of people don't acknowledge, and that is the fact that this is right up there in the supercharged category. Even if you didn't care that much about it, if your parents cared about it a lot and you heard them talking about it a lot. I mean, I can remember viscerally as a child, my parents talking about money, difficulties with money, challenges. My dad was an electrician. My mom didn't work, supporting three kids in the 70s and 80s, harder now than it was back then, but still relatively difficult. And they both came from families with parents who were farmers, sixth grade education, right? So very different sort of background, but all those things stick. All those things become part of your money story. But I'm talking about both money story here and the whole nature of how things become sort of imprinted and then back to what is enough, what is enough. And I wanted to focus just on both making sure you're aware that this is here as a resource, but also talk a little bit about the fulfillment curve, because that's something that, I love. It's visceral, it's mental. It helps me often, especially when I'm going over a particular cliff. Yes, John.
There's someone in the waiting room.
Oh,
It's David. That's the only reason I know.
oh, that's weird. Why is it not popping up anywhere?
Leave him out. Let him sit there.
Oh, I don't, that is so.
Sorry,
Dodger
Norm.
fans.
No, you're
No,
good.
no room for Dodger fans.
Oh God, it's over. It's like literally, I just found it.
On the other side of the room.
Yeah, it's like three screens over. I don't know. I've never seen it pop up over there before. I apologize there, Mr. David.
Or maybe
So
other people. I don't know.
so this court, no, that's he's it, but sorry. Tell me if you see anybody else in there. So, this particular course, you can go through this. It's about, and this is a slimmed down version. I mean, we had a Whopper version we did it at Mentors. It was like, a 2 day. But this really takes the heart of it in about 6 20-minute courses and takes you through this sort of discussion of what is enough and the meaning behind it. I'm going to hit on that, but one of the things that came out of this, at the heart of this, was something called PenFin. And the nickname for PenFin is Pen was like your ATM, cash and cash flow, going to the bank machine. And then Fin was your financial independence number, this sort of idea that there's a certain amount of money that once that amount divided by your pen, your cash flow becomes large enough, work becomes completely optional, which many people think of as some people think of the freedom point as not working. I redefine for myself, my freedom point would be the point where I chose to do what I wanted to do, because I enjoy work. It's kind of fun. I mean, I find it fulfilling. Some people I know don't, but that becomes part of your game as well, as how do you, given that you get a say in the matter, continue to refine what you do to the point that you enjoy what you're doing. Because if you do that, I would say you're financially independent at the point where you're getting to do what you enjoy doing. And then you're completely there when, you're kind of there as a station when work is truly optional. You get up every day and work because you want to work, because you have enough either stored resources or money to be able to do that. And that's what this conversation was. It was basically focusing on these general wealth calculators, right? And we just walked people through first million, save now, lump sum, rule of 72, dividend growth, etc. So by the way, I'm continuing to clean up as I go through these calculators over here. They'll eventually all probably end up over here, but you'll notice all the education pages are here if you didn't see that update. And we've moved a lot of these calculators and we'll continue to move them over here into the general wealth, like the Net Worth Pro and the Advanced Savings Growth Calculator and things like that. Okay. So we'll come back to this because I want to hit on a little bit of the what is enough. But the PenFin was a spreadsheet that I developed because I was curious about like how much money I'd already made and how much would I make over time and how much was I going to keep. And then I went into, kind of my net worth because I was curious about like assets and liabilities. So that whole thing just sort of kept becoming a process. And I'm back to where I started. When I say holding a question without answering it, I've been at this question about money and PenFin and stuff like that for the better part of 20 years. That's an inquiry. There are answers that come, but the question itself is what? That's the important thing, because if I hold the question, what is money? I may have an answer may come, but I don't stop because I got an answer. I just simply say, oh, that's interesting. Or yes, that would be something that I might want to develop or do. But the question, what is money, is still there. So Dan's working on, the 5 options. It's very easy to get to a point where you're like, okay, I got it now. I've got a program. I feel good about it. Let's go live. The problem is the second you go live with it, it's dead. It's not live anymore. You just launch something out to the world that in a way is stillborn because it just becomes fixed on what it is. And you see this with products all the time. The art of this to me is you launch it, and the launching of the product is part of the inquiry. And as you launch that product or that idea, you are just continuing to hold this question, what are the 5 options, really? Like, what's this really all about? And as you do that, the product continues to breathe and become, and you don't know where it's going to go, but it doesn't stop. It just keeps opening up over time. So, I mean, we had this PenFin, the spreadsheet's been around forever, and I'd gone in and put it into, AI and started playing with the spreadsheet and stuff. But then it wasn't until I started working on another project, which is the back end of this thing around investing and creating a sustainable income flywheel, that I came back to this again, right? And played with it. And so it's the same thing you're familiar with, sample PenFin, except this doesn't save anything. This saves everything on your local computer. So there's nothing in the cloud. The system does all the calculations for you in the system, but it saves the data to your local computer. So you'll be able to go in and play with this and build your own PenFin and save it. That way you can go back at any time you want to and just open it up. As long as it's like a Word document, as long as it knows where you saved your file, you'll know exactly where to go, and it will walk you through. And I've actually got, a sample loaded in here. Actually, John, it named it the Thompson family. I did not give it that name. It's kind of funny. It came up with Michael and Sarah Thompson, so I got tickled. But you'll see that this is walking you through that process of your money, your expenses, your net worth, your Penn statement, your Fin statement, with some pretty cool graphs and charts here, and then your ongoing dashboard, which you can update anytime you want. You can just go in here and update stuff and see your dashboard and how you're doing and things like that. And the part 2 that I'm working on, which will be at the end of this, is when you get to this stage and you want to figure out how could I close the gap or get there faster, that's where the new app that I'm working on, which is basically like an income and management tool that you can play around with to kind of figure out, are there some ways to make this thing go faster for me? Again, not necessarily accomplish anything like retire, but if you want to do that, fine. But it could just be, I want to go through and analyze what I'm doing and play around with that in a different way. Okay? But coming back, this has been a 20-year question. And you could say this is an answer. But to me, this is what? It's an answer, but the question hasn't changed. There's still, what is money? What is PenFin? What is a mortgage? What is financial advice? What is liability advice? Any of those questions, if you just hold the question over an extended period of time, you'll be amazed at what will continue to surface for you. But you have to, with attention, pay attention and continue to keep that question alive in a particular way. Now, life will present you with questions that it keeps putting right in your face. And those are usually pretty important to take a look at. Themes, experiences, stuff that you're like, man, this just keeps happening. That's life's way of saying there's a question here that you should be asking and paying attention to. Okay? All right, so let me stop there for 1 second, and then I want to play around a little bit with the PenFin and the what is enough material, specifically kind of this fulfillment curve, because it kind of speaks to this retire, not retire, what is a nothing. But let me stop there and see if you have any questions.
Yes, where is the what is enough stuff?
Okay.
Where did you find that?
It will be here in about another week or so. So meaning that when you come into this, which you're familiar with, you get the certified liability, the FAST, the mentor right there. I'll have all those courses will be moved over. But right now, it's under content. All of those courses are here under content. And you'll see there's Mentor 1, Mentor 2, Mentor 3, Mentor 4. When you go in there, you'll see these are actually live courses that we had taught with group. There's 4 different modules, and this is under the money and finance module right here. And when you go in there, you'll see there's the whole Hive 4 course on money and finance. Then we have cash and liability mastery, and then we have what is enough. And then here's that advanced system I put together on just a stock trading system that I use. I call Taxi. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Got it. All right, good. So let's play around for a second with ye old what is enough. Again, to make sure you know what's there, but I want to hit a couple of highlights while it's sort of fresh from just doing a little thin lit stuff. God, I swear it's like everything's showing up on the other screen today. Making things more challenging. So so I've already posted under the Money and Finance Hive links to I'll post up. I put the link to the What is Enough, the original the What is Enough course. I also put in the new PenFin link so you can go play with that if you want to. And then I'm just going to bring up the old course here. And let's kind of play around with some of the slides because there's a lot of stuff in here, but I'm not going to go through all of the slides. I just kind of want to hit a couple of the highlights. This particular exercise, let's see, how would be the best way to do this? Let me make this kind of a little bit bigger because I do want to hit on a couple of things. If you want to save money in your life, you simply need to become aware of your spending. You do not need to spend less money. You do not need to budget. What's different about the PenFin mindset is anytime you base a system on deprivation, it ultimately breaks down. You actually lose not only the dopamine, which is a critical part of how we motivate ourselves, but it just doesn't work. If you think about dieting, if you've ever been on a diet, if you ever try to go in and restrict your spending, it's deprivational. I'm not getting to spend. It just doesn't work. It may work for a little while, but it'll eventually break down. So I'm telling you, if you're working with children or parents or anyone else, and you want them to save more money, the best way to start doing that is to say, become aware of your spending. And that's in the PenFin system, a big part of that awareness, which came from the Money of Your Life stuff, which is where I first got exposed to this idea of money awareness, is to simply look at what you're spending money on and then ask yourself, is that fulfilling? When I spend that money, is it fulfilling to me in some way? And I found I have to do it personally and professionally, meaning there are things that I would spend money on in the business that I wouldn't spend money on personally. And I would say it was for the business, but then I'd be in the business going, wait a minute, I'm spending this money in the business and it's not helping me or it's not fulfilling either in the business. So I had to kind of end up over time just asking that question, is this fulfilling? Like we spend a small fortune, it seems like, on streaming, movies, stuff. But my wife, I talked about it, it's like one of our favorite things to do on the weekend. Saturday night, Friday night, just sitting back in the theater and watching a good movie and hanging out and drinking a glass of wine. So it's really fulfilling. I don't mind spending a lot of money on movies and streaming stuff. It's part of what we enjoy doing. But there's usually things when you start paying attention, especially if you go through and do the pen exercise where you put down all of your spending that you've done over the last month or quarter, and you start looking at some things that'll just jump out at you. You're like, why are we spending so much on this? And that's what I mean by the awareness of why am I spending so much on this? That's not a deprivational question. That's a what? Why am I doing that? Is it just a pattern? Is it just something we've gotten used to doing? Maybe we don't need to do that in the same way. So a lot of this kind of overconsumption has been tracked back to just pattern-based spending. In many cases, I deserve it because I work hard. But the problem is that becomes a sort of self-fulfilling deprivational challenge. So we went through the spreadsheet and we would look at the money that we make, the income that we've made over time. And this is something we pointed out in Trevor's class. If you make $80,000 a year over the 40 plus years that you work, you'll make over $5 million. So think about it. If you had zero expenses over that time period, you'd be what? Worth over $5 million when you retire, because there'd be no spending. It would just all be savings. But we have to spend money, right, to live. So most of us are millionaires in terms of income over our lifetime. Most of us on this call have made over $80,000 as a household over the 40 plus years that we'll work, right? So in many cases, you might be making $6, $7, $8, $10 million. And that, for me, when I first heard that concept of, wait a minute, you're going to be multimillionaires based on your earnings, then the part that you keep is a function of what? How much of those multi-millions do I not spend? And then I've got this thing called compounding and time value of money, where the last double is so important, so critical to the concept of compounding and time value of money and starting early. But I've got to let that compounding work, because I don't have to save $5 million to have $5 million when I retire. I'm actually going to bounce back over because that was a fun conversation yesterday. And I'm going to come back over to the, my God, where is all my stuff going? It's like every time okay, all right, sorry. It's like, I don't really have that many screens open, but God, now it's like, now your faces are over here. Try to put you back over here. So the rule of 72 calculator says that, that money doubles. If you take 72 and divide it by your return, 7.2%, your money doubles every 10 years. I saw another thing. I mean, I knew that we had been averaging over 10% for the last 10 years, but I saw something the other day that was basically saying in the last 30 years of stock market investing, the average return is like 10.49%, right? So that means at 10% return, you're doubling every 7.2 years. So when you look at that last double, and this is part of the key concept here, is if your first double is 10, or I'm sorry, in this case, let's just say right now you have $50,000 that we're going to say, you could say what you're starting with. Let's say that you had $50,000 by the time you're age 30. That would mean in 35 years, you can see you're going to get about 5 doubles between 30 and 65. What's important there, when you see this final value of 1.405, the first double to 100,000 is in year 8, and then 16 is 229, and then 447, and then 1.05. You see that last double there. If you look at this, the last double was 563,000. It's 10 times this double from year 8 to year 16. So, if you can only do one thing for your kids, you got 2 options. One, you can teach them about this. I would say if you could teach them this and put $10,000 and just say, I'm going to put $10,000 away in an account. When my kids, by the time they're 20, they're going to have 45 years between 20 and 65. If you could just put away a trust, $10,000 leave that $10,000 sitting in a trust, you'll have close to $750,000 if you never add another dime. But hopefully they would jump in and start engaging here as well. But each of these allow you to kind of look at what does it take to hit a particular goal, whether it's the first million, or if you say, I really want, $3 million when I retire, and how long do I have to get there? If I've got 40 years to get there, I can do that with 10,000 invested in $500 a month. But if I can actually continue, if inflation continues to go bonkers, and which means, inflation affects asset values at 10%, even with a 3% inflation, I'm still there in 35 years. I can get there in a reasonable period of time. But how do you get there? A lot of people like, how do I get $100, $200, $300 a month of free cash flow to save? That comes back to, we want to avoid the deprivational state of budgeting and simply become aware of where do we spend money and how do we spend money, and is it fulfilling or not? Because it'll tell you a lot about where you should spend your time. Why? Because you start to, in the life rating scale, you're simply asking yourself, how much do I enjoy the money that I'm spending now? It's all spending. You're going to spend the money now or spend the money later. It's just for every dollar you don't spend now, you get to spend at some point in the future. But this is kind of what I wanted to touch on today. Oops. Now, I tell you, my computer is acting really janky. There we go. Fulfillment curve. If you only take one thing away from this course, this is a thing that left the biggest mark for me, because I think about it all the time. I think about it financially. I think about it energetically. I think about it when I'm working on something. I think about it when I'm in a conversation, in a relationship with someone, because it's always sort of active. And the fulfillment curve, as Joe Dominguez kind of created this concept in Your Money or Your Life, if you're not familiar with this book, is that when we were little babies, when we were born, it did not take a lot to make us happy. But the one thing that we learn at a very, very early age is that fulfillment comes from outside of us. We're literally conditioned. Think about it. You were inside someone, and now you're outside someone. And the second you're outside someone, you have duality, you have other, and suddenly that outside person is taking care of you. They make you happy, they feed you, they change you. Boy, this is where happiness comes from. Out there. Now, as we say, you're always going to pay a mortgage when? After you move out of your parents' house. And you're going to pay it in rent, which is someone else's mortgage, or you're going to pay your own mortgage. But once you move out, and you've probably seen the stats, 42% of people between age 18 and 35 are now living with their parents. And in some places like New Jersey, California, places like that, it's getting close to 50% in that age group. It's astonishing because they can't even afford to live outside of their parents' home at this point. But we learned something else, right? That money is equal to fulfillment. And you learn it in weird ways. Like I remember the first time we went and mom and dad saved up for us to go to Disney World. And we talked about it for years. And they kept putting that money aside. And we still didn't fly. We drove all the way to Orlando from North Carolina. But the buildup of years, 2 or 3 years of talking about it. And then we went, and what was it? It was incredible. It was freaking Disney World. They don't call it Disney World for no reason. But it came what? On the heels of saving and kind of gritting to make it work. And then you have an incredible time. And talking about memory, a reinforcement of what? Happiness comes from out there and there's a huge component of money that we tie to fulfillment. It's just tied right in. Now, what happens though is we live in a society or a world where, quite honestly, our basic comforts, unlike my great grandparents who lived on a farm and made their own food, all that kind of stuff, right? We can make money, lots of money, and we can buy things that far exceed our necessities. In other words, just eating food becomes going to Whole Foods and having the best food and getting Kobe beef and eating out, and all these things start to happen. And what's kind of cool about comforts as opposed to survival is there is a incremental benefit. I mean, quite frankly, I love electricity and air conditioning, and all those kinds of things, right? Comfort things feel good. They are comfortable. And guess what? There is more fulfillment as you make more money. Now, the cool thing is you get more fulfillment, and you're still, though, however, tied to what? That more fulfillment is tied to more money. If you've ever gone through a period of being without something, really being without something, you realize how that less money creates less physical comfort. It can be everything from just giving your horse a lower quality food, right? Or not going out as much, or whatever. These are all things that become part of that process. But we firmly at this point, because this process of comfort equals more and better, we get absolutely inculcated, and we believe that more money leads to what? More fulfillment. Okay? We almost need it to be that way. And this is where the justification system will start to kick in eventually as we move to luxury. And when we say luxuries, now we're at the point, as you can see the crest of this particular arc, where there is still incremental what? On the left axis.
Fulfillment.
Fulfillment. There's still more fulfillment, but what happened to that gap between comfort and luxury on the money spent category?
Not as much return on your investment.
Absolutely. Well done. This number got really wide, which means you're now getting to the point where a lot more money buys you a little bit more fulfillment. But still, what is being reinforced?
Money buys more joy.
More money equals more joy, more fulfillment, everything. And this is the part that's really, really tough. Because by the time you get to this stage, it's the air that you breathe. The working the longer hours, the doing all kinds of other stuff, because this becomes the system that you're working within. And for many of us, and this is where I'm asking you to think about the difference between deprivation and actually awareness. When I say, is it fulfilling? What I'm really asking you to do is when you're spending money, you're asking yourself, like, okay, is this money I'm spending right now, is this going to be fulfilling? And in a way, you're saying, is it about a survival, a comfort, or a luxury? Because once you keep going here, you stop noticing it takes more and more and more and more money for less and less fulfillment. And I'll tell you, you guys know I did this thing where we bought 3 properties at the beach and the lake and the mountains with a group of families, and we laid out this whole thing. We bought 3 $1 million properties, and we divided them all by 12. This was how I was going from luxury to super luxury. Like, we got a house at the beach, a house in the mountains, a house at the lake. This is the coolest thing ever. And boy, did I start to learn this lesson. Because when you suddenly got 3 million-dollar plus houses and 12 families and each house involved. I mean, it became an absolute job. And I got to experience this firsthand, but this is happening all the time. It could be you've got 3 streaming services and and you really enjoy them and you're fulfilled by all of them. But if you've got 9, you have to ask, I can't watch 9 different streaming services. I mean, maybe I cycle them and we have one for a while, then one for another while, because it's just keeping all of them just because we might watch them one day. Maybe that's not terribly fulfilling. But at some point, you get into this thing where you're trapped. You're trapped by your own luxury and fulfillment. In other words, this money equal fulfillment starts working against you. But the problem is you don't know anything else. So what do? You just keep working harder and harder and harder, thinking there's more and more and more stuff that I need. A bigger house will do it. A cooler car will do it. More travel will do it. And the answer is, if it does it, great. Like if you enjoy traveling. I had this great conversation with a friend of mine recently who retired, and he and his wife started traveling. And for the first month or 2, it was fun. About the 3rd month, they were like, we're so sick of traveling. And they thought it was going to be what? The coolest thing ever. But if you aren't willing to have enough awareness to say, it's not what I thought it was, and try something different, you'll keep traveling because what? I said I was going to travel, and by God, I'm going to travel no matter how much it costs in time, energy, or whatever. But the thing about this point, and this is a way to know if anything in your life, okay, is kind of getting to this point, you'll find on this spectrum here that you had to acquire it, or you had to learn it, or you had to operate it, or you had to store it, or you had to maintain it, or you had to fix it, or you're still making payments on it, or you're constantly worried it's going to get stolen, I got to protect it, or I feel guilty about it, or I need to upgrade it again because it's not doing it for me, or God bless, I'm spending all my time selling stuff that I've been through that stage for the last couple of years, downsizing, whatever, where I'm just like, I just don't use this stuff anymore. I just got to get rid of it. I'm tired of fixing it. I'm tired of worrying about it. We had a big flood in our backyard and hell stuff, and I was gone. I was like so bummed. And then about 2 weeks later, I'm like, I don't need any of that shit. The good Lord took it all away. I mean, I don't need a lawnmower anymore. I got a guy now that does lawns. I don't like doing lawns. It wasn't fulfilling to me. So it's worth 50, 60 bucks a week to have somebody come mow my grass, right? But these are little things where over time, for some reason, we've made these decisions. I can tell you what the reason was. It was because this worked and this worked and this was still working. By gosh, I'm hitting the pedal now and I'm going here. And this is true with money too. It's really strange. You apply money to this, you spend your whole life acquiring it and learning how to deal with it and operating it and storing it and maintaining it. And suddenly you realize you're in the money management business. You got a new job, constantly worried about the market crashing, constantly worried about getting a higher return, constantly feeling guilty about how much you have or how much you got, or what am I going to give it away? That'd be the version of selling it, right? You're like, I spent my whole life trying to have money and now what? I'm not sure what to do with it. This is all part of the question. Holding that question, because each of us have a different journey and a different experience with this. There is no one journey charming, right? It's your journey that's important. And the question becomes for you is on the fulfillment curve, are there things right now that you've had to spend money to acquire or learn or operate or store or maintain, or you're still fixing it or making payments on it or feeling guilty about it, or try and decide if you just need to upgrade it or sell it? Because if they are, then maybe you've got things that are over here where they're just more luxuries. And now they're way over here on the money spent side, and they're actually down here on the fulfillment side. They're in the way. This is where the very art of simplifying, of cleaning. Carl's not on this call. I don't know, maybe he is, Carl Spiteri. He was telling me the other day that his most popular podcast he's ever had. Are you here, Carl? What was it we were talking about? Your most popular podcast shocked you?
It was about decluttering.
Decluttering.
Yeah, it was a closet expert who showed seniors how to get rid of stuff and fix their closets so they can still access them. Thousands and thousands of views. It's amazing.
It was like you had 30-something thousand? Was it 30?
Yeah, it was some crazy number like that. Yeah.
It was like,
37.
I was like, dude, that is a tap, right? That is an incredible tap for you to tie into. You can tie into money and wealth, but you can also talk about it in the context of decluttering, simplifying your life. John renamed his whole company Simple Mortgage, right? In a way, because you realize people at a certain point in time, their lives become not accumulating more, but getting rid of stuff. Now, the problem is, are you going to figure this out at 85 or 65 or 45? Because it has a huge impact on your life if you can start asking the question again, what is enough? That one question has been with me for 20 plus years. What is enough? What's enough time in a day? What's enough money? What's enough food at a meal? I mean, I know when I'm full, and oftentimes I'm still eating because I enjoy what? Eating. But if I have the awareness that I'm actually full and I stopped eating, guess what happened? I started losing some weight. But I was eating out of what? Habit and the fact that I just like to eat. But I wasn't considering the fact that I was already full. It's that same thing. You just apply it to money and time. You know, you're greedy with your time. You feel like there's not enough of it, right? This works for time spent, money spent, energy spent, relationships spent. Put in any lower axis here and start paying attention. You know, I had this person in my life, and it was just like they were always calling, but I noticed they were always calling me at particular times when they had issues. And I was like, this relationship, it's not fulfilling at all, right? To me, all things being equal, this is not something I want to continue to invest in. But we all have it, but you let that go. Just like when the flood took all that stuff away, I wouldn't have thrown it away, but it was gone, and I haven't replaced any of it. I love seeing this huge garden shelter and all stuff down here, and there's nothing down here now but pine straw. It's a good feeling. So when you're spending money, spending time, spending energy, anything that wasn't as fulfilling as it used to be, and this is the art of this. There's stuff 10 years ago that I did that I could tell you was incredibly fulfilling at the time. Then guess what? It ain't anymore. And that's another part of it. You are also constantly changing. So if you think this exercise is, I got the answer, if you got the answer at 48, it's going to be a different answer at 52 and 58 and 65 and 75 as to what's really fulfilling to you. And that's the part, again, keeping the question open as an open inquiry and not feeling like I've got to get the thing answered, because at some point your curve is going to set. Okay, just like the sun sets, I know of no one that's cheated death yet. And at some point, this is where we end up. And the question is, right, did I spend all this time working frenetically to get to this as fast as I could? Because I don't want to spend a lot of time on the back end of the curve worrying about having enough, which means I have to say I have enough. What's really difficult is to say I am enough. If you can really say that to yourself sincerely, I am enough. If you had a mantra that you were going to follow for weeks at a time, that's a great one to try on. It's challenging. Just keep saying, I am enough. Because a lot of the frenetic activity that we have in our lives is a function of a belief that we aren't enough in some way, and we're trying to spackle that not enoughness with accomplishing a goal at work or accomplishing something else. Again, always trying to figure out, how do we fill this gap and feel like we're enough? This peak of the curve is very difficult at first because we have no training in enoughness. If you think about marketing and our society and everything else going on in our lives, I can tell you the system is designed for you to not feel like you are enough. Every time there's a new model car, inflation itself is designed to make things more expensive in the future. So we have to buy things now. Everything inflates, everything compounds. You could say the very system we live in is a simulation of what? Constantly reflecting back to us that compared to other people, we're not enough. To stop comparing and just simply tell yourself, I am enough, because you are the only person that can go on your particular journey and be the hero of that particular journey. No one else can do it. I can't do it for Dan. He's doing it for himself. Nor would I. That would be cruel for me to take Dan's journey away from him, right? It's his journey. It's my journey. It's my dragon, that I got to figure out and slay. But so much of it is just the acceptance of the fact that, by God, I am enough right as I am. And that doesn't mean I don't work. It doesn't mean I don't do things, but I can at least avoid the frenetic activity, the frenetic spending, the stuff that just doesn't, make a difference. So take your time, play around with this, make peace with the past, as Joe said. And for me, it's just, this is what I call a nothing. And I don't know if this was in the book, but this was sort of for myself. I came up with the idea that basically I want every day to be about a nothing. At the end of the day, the question is, was I a nothing today? Meaning I accepted that what was done, and it was what? Good. I did what I could do today, whether it was talking to my mom and helping her get out of her house because her garage door broke and she couldn't leave her house, or figuring out how to fix a bug on the software, or talking to somebody. It's all what? You can literally beat yourself up and say, I could have done a better job. This is all what? This is back to memory and pattern and stuff. Can you simply accept that, by gosh, you probably did the best job you could at whatever you did? From a macro version of being a mom or dad to just being a loan officer or a liability advisor, or just having breakfast with a partner or spouse. And that in and of itself was enough. And as much as I can, I try to ask or live my life in the enouging category, because I find great peace here. And it's a moving target, meaning I'm changing, the environment's changing. One week you're wondering if we're on the brink of world ending nuclear war, and the next week, you feel like, okay, it looks like everything's going to be okay again. That's happening too, and that can affect your version of a nothing, right? But it's still a nothing, because enough is a destination, and I have yet to find a destination that's permanent other than this one right here. So until that point in time, you're always on the inging part of it. You're drinking, you're sleeping, you're talking, you're working, you're doing, you're being. It's always about the ing until it ain't. And for that reason, there really isn't a destination to get to. And that's why I say, when you hold a question or something that's important to you, hold it, but don't think you've answered it, because that'll just cut you off from what might be the really, really good stuff that's going to come if you just keep asking, hey, what is enough for me? What is enough money? What is enough success? What is enough time? What is enough what? Whatever it is. Okay? Any questions? Thoughts? What's one takeaway? Kind of give us a quickie on anything that maybe you can walk away, if you just for yourself, that you say, all right, I'm going to remember this. Some of you guys have seen this multiple times, but hopefully it's different because you're different.
I've seen this quite a few times, and one of my favorites. It's reminding me where I probably got to the point now where when I do spend money on my toys, it's definitely stuff that brings joy. My various life-risking toys, like a one wheel and and electric scooters for off-road, and now a motorcycle. Like, Some may call it midlife crisis. I call it working on the whatever part of my brain, the elasticity of my brain, and stuff that gives me fun and joy and experience. I guess experiences might be a better word, actually.
Yeah, like
I really
camping
love to
and
spend money on experiences more than stuff these days.
yeah, boy, that I've noticed that too. More and more, it's just like the stuff is just stuff. It goes
Yeah.
right back to having to do all this kind of shit with the stuff. Experiences, man, they're just very, very different.
Yeah, the
Well,
maintain it and fixing it stuff stands out to me. Freaking hate that. With all the old crap I have that I got to take care of now.
anything else? It's one thing that stood out to you, Lauren, as a newbie. Really?
I just needed I needed to hear I am enough today, right? Because like
Mm.
I have my goals and then I have where I'm at and they're just so far apart. So like just trying to say like, okay, well, I'm enough today. I'm doing absolutely everything that I can and just being able to be okay sitting in that.
Mm,
Awesome.
it's good.
And trust that everything compounds.
Yeah.
Sleep, creep, leap. It's that sleep to creep
Mm.
phase, with plants, and there's a process. There's an actual formula for how things compound and grow. But that last double, in your business, it's the same. You can work your whole life and then suddenly do one thing in the end of your career. This could be worth, millions if it's financial. It could be impactful in other ways, right? But you don't, it's all part of the foundation building.
Hey, Todd, can I put David on the spot?
Yeah.
So I taught this at his high school when he was probably in 10th or 11th grade. So David, any comments?
You get to put me on the spot. Yeah, you taught us this from a long time ago. And fortunately or unfortunately, growing up and cleaning out the garage every weekend made me not want stuff. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't spend money on stuff that I don't find enjoyment out of. Like I think my biggest purchase recently, besides a car, was my golf clubs because that's what I love spending time doing. I'm currently currently going to be moving in the next couple months, and I know I could pack up and put everything I own in my car in less than a couple hours, and that makes me happy.
That's awesome. Good for you. Good for you. See, John, that stuff's compounding, The rate he's going, he'll evaporate.
Well, the problem is he has stuff in my garage. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's different. That's a different conversation.
That's stuff that you and mom want,
Well played, David. Well played. Cool. Anything else? How about you, Jordan? Is this your first time seeing this? Have you been through this yet? The what is enough?
I don't know if I've been through one of your talks on it, but what was the question? I got a phone call in
That's
the middle of
okay.
our.
That's okay. It's in the Mentor Continuum materials, but just you came in a little late. But anything that stood out to you? I know you're kind of focused on this area right now of money.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the growth stages. For me, fulfillment wise, usually me and my wife are both collectors of hobbies. So, something that became a time investment, but also kind of a form of fulfillment and enjoyment is we're driving about an hour, one day a week down to go take a leatherworking course.
Mhm.
And so we're trying out leatherworking, and so we're having fun doing that.
That's awesome. I see the only difference between a hobby and work is payment. And when you take money out of the equation, it's fascinating how you feel differently sometimes about something, and how ironically you'll end up making more doing it in time, especially if you just play around in your work. It's astonishing dynamic. All right. Anyone else? I know I don't want to keep you too much past because I know it's 3:03. You guys got places to be.
Todd, I had a
Jackie.
thought.
Yeah.
Hey, I flipped this not in my personal world, but like in my business day to day right now. And I feel bombarded with so many tools and toys and AI and this and that and programs to sign up for, and I get overwhelmed, and then I'm a deer in the headlights, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought the same thing. It's like there's so many people out there want to push. You got to win your day. You got to win your day by this time or that time. But if you don't win your day, you end up feeling like you lost. And I catch myself in that mental, space where it's like, shoot, well, today sucked because I didn't win my day. I didn't make those phone calls. I didn't do this or that. And it sucks because I have to forcibly remind myself, what did I do? I did get things done today. I got this call or I did that. So that's kind of where I'm at right now too. And I wrote myself a sticky note. It says, what works, do that, and build from that. I had to remind myself, it's like all this stuff sometimes isn't going to make more business happen sometimes. Not this stuff. This stuff is rich. What I think I've found my home here with you. But when it came to all the other tools I was spinning around with, I'm like, all of the extra tools aren't going to make more business. It's right here that's going to make more business. So I had to back off what works, do that, and build from that. Just simplify, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Clear out all the junk,
Yeah. Find your one or two wells and just
Yeah.
dig them, and you'll know if you're hitting water eventually or not. And
Bunny, I would add to that because
water.
I love to learn. And so I was always taking every course offered and all of this kind of stuff. And I was spending so much of my day learning this product and that product. And all of a sudden I was like, man, how am I not getting? Well, you do have to actually spend time on other things. And so it became okay, like, let's get away from that. And again, like you're saying, figure out the actual ones that because it was chasing that comfort, that instead of expending money, it was time on education, which felt like it should be getting me more, but actually was hitting that curve of plateauing and actually diminishing returns.
Yeah. The shiny penny, right? Chasing the shiny penny. That's what I do sometimes.
Indeed. All right. Well, you guys have a great weekend. Stay frosty. You are enough. Don't forget that. Bye.